2 days after George Young was gunned down on his front porch, his wife Tia and family friend Tim Lee are brought in for questioning.
The story still continued to change.
One of the biggest reveals, Tia tells cops that Tim isn't really her brother. He's just a family friend who needed a place to live.
To us, that was a big deal. Like, before, this is what you had said, and now he's not your brother.
And their stories about what happened the night of the murder are shifting.
She began to add things that didn't make sense. When we spoke with Tim, it was the same thing. The story was not the same about when they saw each other. Now he had done things that he hadn't mentioned before.
The interviews would soon give the cops the break they needed. A bombshell coming from the Youngs' next-door neighbor.
We were in the middle of the interview, and when we took a break and came out, another detective had just left and called us and said, "Hey, this is what he just told us."
The neighbor says immediately after hearing gunfire that night, he looked out his window and saw who he believed was Tim. He was running from the Youngs' home to George's Lincoln Navigator parked in the driveway. The neighbor claims he watched the man remove something from the SUV, then run back inside. Detectives returned to the interrogation room and asked Tim about it.
We asked him, did you ever go out to the car for some reason? And he said, "Okay, I know where you're going with that." And he says, "I was getting the tracker off the car." And so immediately we're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you took a tracker off the car?
Tim claims George asked him to place a GPS tracker on his truck for safety.
In case something were to ever happen to him, that they would be able to find the vehicle.
But if George had really asked Tim to put a tracker on his truck, why the rush to remove it after the murder?
You took the time to step over his body, not offering aid to him, and your first thought was to go get the tracker. And he said, "Well, it was just my first instinct because I wanted to protect George."
Protect George from what? He'd been shot and was bleeding to death on the porch.
He's like, "I didn't want anyone in the family or friends to find out so they wouldn't think anything negative about him."
Tim then tells cops George had been running guns from Florida to North Carolina, and a man involved had come looking for him.
That guy had come to the house and visited them and told Tia that George owed him money.
Could that man really be the killer? When cops asked Tia about the shady dealings, the elaborate story falls apart.
She had no idea what we were talking about.
That made me very upset because I felt like they were trying to defame his character, and I knew that wasn't true.
When cops returned to the Youngs' home to pick up the tracker, Ivy pulls Detective Smith aside, unknowingly exposing yet another major crack in Tim and Tia's story.
I told him that, I knew that there was an insurance policy, and I felt like maybe that had something to do with it, but I wasn't sure.
Detectives were stunned. Just hours earlier at the police station, Tia told them she didn't believe there was a life insurance policy.
There had been in the past, but to her knowledge, they had lapsed.
They soon discovered that not only was there $1 million policy, Tia was the sole beneficiary, and she had already called the insurance company to process the payout.
They had recorded phone calls where she had called less than 24 hours right after the murder.
It was all adding up, but Detective Smith says Tia's 13-year-old son also unknowingly exposed yet another of his mother's lies. It stems from the 911 call the night of the killing. Here's an interview she gave to our Atlanta affiliate, CBS 46.
And I begged, when I called 911, I begged them not to turn sirens on because I didn't want my kids to see him like that.
The Youngs' 3 sons didn't see their father like that. Amazingly, cops say they slept through all the commotion.
We were in and out of their rooms doing searches. We were talking to everyone, the medical examiner, the fire trucks, ambulances, police, CSI taking pictures, neighbors coming outside. Everyone woke up but the kids.
Detectives believe they know why.
She had been giving him Unisom sleep pills.
Tia admits giving one of her sons sleeping pills in the past to help him stay asleep at night. The boy told cops he hadn't had one for a month, until the night of his father's death. However, that's not what his mom said.
With my interview in Tia, she stated that she had been giving it to him several nights that week, and he said that that wasn't true.
Cops suspect the night of the killing, Tia gave all her sons a sleeping pill.
Obviously, we know the middle one had taken the pill willingly, but our theory may be that they had all been given that pill that night.
Tim and Tia quickly became the prime suspects in George's murder, and not just in the eyes of detectives.
I said, I think you and Timmy killed my brother.
2 days after arriving in Georgia, Ivy made the bombshell accusation to her sister-in-law.
I watched every move that she made. She definitely had something to hide.
Investigators suspected the same thing, but needed more evidence before making an arrest. Much of it they'd find on Tim and Tia's cell phones.
Kind of all began to unravel from there.
Cops say the night George was killed, Tim was tracking his every move, using the GPS tracker he'd placed on his truck and an app on his phone.
So we knew he was the only person that would have known when he was coming home.
In addition to the life insurance money, investigators also uncovered what they claim is another motive for murdering George.
Tia did not want to be with George anymore.
Despite what she told cops, friends and family say Tia and George's marriage was on the rocks, and there was plenty of proof of that on her phone.
The texts between Tia and Tim were very romantic, they were sexual, they were something that you would send to your boyfriend or your girlfriend, your husband or your wife, but definitely not your brother.
With evidence mounting against Tim and Tia, in April they were both brought back into police headquarters for questioning. Cops immediately asked about their relationship.
I put some explicit emails that she had sent to Tim down in front of her.
Tia admits to having an affair with Tim. She claims it stopped after the murder, but had started back up again.
She was ashamed of it, but she thought George was in a relationship.
Investigators say they found no evidence George was having an affair, or that he knew his wife was.
I don't think he would think the person that he opened his home up to and gave a job would ever do anything like that to him or would betray him in that way.
Unlike Tia, Tim wouldn't admit to anything.
Tim did stop and request a lawyer once I confronted him about the relationship.
After the interrogation, Tim and Tia were both arrested and charged in connection with the murder of George Young.
They've both been charged with malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault.
Cops allege Tim and Tia conspired to kill George for the life insurance money, and so they could be together. They claim the emotion Tia showed in TV interviews following her husband's death was all an act.
I don't know how I'm gonna do it by myself. He was a really good guy. Everybody loved George. Everybody.
Detective Smith believes Tim Lee either hired someone to actually pull the trigger or did it himself.
I think that it's more likely he did it, just because of the time frame. I think he came out the back door, came and hid in the bushes. Once he shot George, he went back in through the back door.
George's sister Ivy believes the same.
I feel like he weaseled his way into that house and just wreaked havoc, and I do blame him. Out of the two of them, I'm more angry at him, but I'm disappointed in her.
In court, the couple pleaded not guilty. The judge refused to grant bail, keeping them behind bars until their trial. Detective Smith is confident they'll be found guilty.
This is not a case where there's just a few things that made us feel like they were involved. It was constantly coming back to them.
As for the $1 million life insurance policy, Tia has not collected a cent.
Once the insurance company learned that she was a suspect, they hold that money and they will not let that money out until there is a conviction or they learn what's going to happen in court.
Since their mom's arrest, Tia's 3 sons have been staying with their mother. Ivy hasn't seen her nephew since early December. Tia cut her out of their lives for accusing her of murder.
I'm here whenever they need me. They know I go hard for them. So as soon as they call me and say, Ivy, I need this, I need that, I'll be there. And I'm going to do everything in my power to take care of those boys because they mean a lot to me.
As for the sister-in-law she once looked up to, if Ivy could talk to Tia today,
I would tell her that I love her, but I'm very disappointed in her. I feel betrayed. I want them to know that my brother was a very good man. My brother loved Tia. He worshiped the ground she walked on, and he did not deserve this.
2 of the things prosecutors will have to contend with at trial are the facts that police say they did not find gunshot residue on Tia Young or Lee, and the murder weapon has still not been found. As of right now, no trial date has been set for the 2 accused killers. I'm Chris Hansen. If you like this story, make sure you tune in every day to Crime Watch Daily. You can find where the show airs in your city at crimewatchdaily.com. Watch it live or record it on your DVR and watch it at night. And to all those criminals out there, remember, we are watching.